Hi, my name is Rebecca Snyder, and I am a survivor of human trafficking. For me, I grew up in a broken household. My mom is an alcoholic. My dad supposedly died when I was 7, but he's not dead, and I didn't find that out until I was 18. So both my parental figures were not really there for me, let's put it that way. And when I got taken, I had a daughter at the time who was 6 months old. And that is what was used against me for the most part was, we know where your kid is. And my daughter meant the world to me. So I was willing to do whatever I had to keep her safe. And for me, that was being trafficked. I was taken at gunpoint because my baby father was involved in a gang and there was a drug dispute that gone wrong and I was taken to repay his debt. It happens right down the street. Literally right down the street from here. I mean, I can walk in the casino right now as we speak and point out girls that are working in the casino.
The Demand Project focuses on fighting 3 different crimes: sex trafficking, child pornography, and lewd proposals to minors. And we do that through a very proactive approach through prevention and prosecution. And then also on the back end, more of a reactive side, is the rescue and the restoration of victims of sex trafficking.
So we were living in Denver, Colorado, and it was about 12 and a half years ago, and we were about ready to go to bed watching the news like we did every night. I was a cosmetologist and my husband was an honest salesman, and we saw a story on the news that would forever change our lives. You know, people get the call to come to start a ministry, and this night was our call. We were watching the news and there was a story about a man that had raped his 2-year-old little girl, and he had videotaped the rape. And if that's not bad enough, he put it onto the internet. And at that time, the internet was very young because it was over 12 years ago. But the last part was that line in the sand moment, that fist clenching moment, when we found out that thousands of people logged on to watch the rape. We'll never know what happened to that little girl. Never. It'll forever be that story that we'll never know what happened to her. Did that kill her? Was she still with her dad? We don't know. At that time, you couldn't track IP addresses. So we're trying to figure out what can we do about this, trying to call the internet server about what to do, and nobody could do anything. So in that moment, we thought, what can we do to find out what this is first of all, and then what could a cosmetologist and an honest salesman do about it? So that took us on a journey that landed us in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We were told by a prayer minister that we needed to get spiritually trained up to fight in such an evil battle. So we started at Victory Bible Institute at the time. And that first year of Bible school was revelation. We had no idea about the power with Jesus Christ. We had no idea. And so it was a rough first year, a stretching first year, but such an extraordinary first year. I mean, miracles, signs, and wonders happened that first year that I couldn't even tell you everything that happened, but we learned what sex trafficking was. We learned that we were called to do something about it, and that started our whole path that now has taken us 12 and a half years later that we started the Demand Project. As we were researching what this was, we found out about human trafficking, and we found an organization that was just starting, and we didn't really fit with the organization, so God put in our lap, Stop Child Trafficking Now, and we started with that organization. It had just come about. So we helped to develop and to build that organization as directors. And we worked with them from 2008 to 2013. In 2013, that's when we resigned our positions and started the Demand Project.
Oklahoma City, Robinson Avenue, and Bricktown. If you think about this, anywhere that there's alcohol flowing readily and that people have money in their pockets is probably a hot spot. Honestly, those are the 2 things that you look for. In Tulsa, 11th Street and Pine and Peoria are 2 big hot spots. Also, the hotels on Memorial, right down the street from here, are huge hot spots. It's crazy. Anywhere that you can hide in plain sight is potentially somewhere where someone's being trafficked. 95% of the girls that I know personally that are in the game still or have been in the game, we've all been trafficked in the state at one point in time or another, or traveled through the state. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a specific profile, like the younger usually the better, but as far as like height, weight, age, sex, it doesn't really matter who the person is. I wouldn't say necessarily it was my age that kept me there, like it was more fear. But at the same point in time, when you grow up in a household where you're always belittled and you're always beat and you don't know what is supposed to be, that becomes real life. That's what you think you deserve because that's the only thing you know. So in a way, it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm supposed to be here. This is what God destined me to do, which I know today is not the truth. But at the time, you start to believe that this is what I'm supposed to be.
I can tell you that basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, somebody is for sale and being exploited in Oklahoma and in Tulsa specifically. Whether it's through online ads, whether it's through closed networks of population groups in Oklahoma, whether it's the Asian population or the Hispanic population or the African American population, there are hundreds of people every day being exploited in Tulsa. I'm a police officer with the city of Jenks, and so I work proactively on cases that are in Jenks. But as in the Demand Project, my main role is to keep kids aware and keep them informed of the dangers of online predators and tactics and methods that either traffickers, pimps, or an online predator might use to lure them and groom them from their homes to put them in these situations. And so we do a lot of education, and then I also like to educate parents on mobile apps that are out there that are being used in the wrong way. Also educate them on social media, the do's and don'ts. I like to give them a glimpse of that world so that they know what their kids are up against virtually every day that they're on a smartphone or a tablet or a computer.
We felt that God called us to stay in the United States and fight this issue. And we felt that we really wanted to focus on not just the traffickers and pimps, but the predators that were buying the people for sex, but also the rescue and restoration of the products, the people that were being sold for sex. So, and we wanted, Stop Child Trafficking now the president was starting to move towards donor-driven, and we wanted to stay as a community, and we wanted to build a community, an army out of the community. And we wanted the community to help us fight this thing. There's nothing that bothers me more than when somebody that meets us and finds out what we do, and they say, "Good luck to you guys." And I want to say, are you going to base the rescue, the restoration, the end of sex trafficking on our luck? Because to me, it's each person's individual responsibility to protect those that are vulnerable. Children and women and boys that are being victimized by predators. And it's our responsibility to take down the predators. It's our responsibility to take back our community. And Jason and I can't do that by ourselves, nor can any of the other organizations fighting this. It's going to take everyone in every community going neighborhood at a time and changing things. And so when we started the Demand Project, we felt like prevention, prosecution, rescue, and restoration were the 4 areas that we could fill a gap in. We can't do it all, but we can fill a gap in those 4 areas. So I'm now a private investigator, and I'm becoming a national certified advocate, and my husband is now a police officer.
I would honestly say anybody can become a victim. So does it make it more prevalent if you're homeless or young or a runaway teenager, or you don't have family that cares, or your parents are a drug addict? Absolutely, but anybody can fall into it. I was taken right before my 16th birthday, and I got out right before my 26th birthday. Some of these girls had a friend that committed suicide, and they just couldn't figure out how to get back on the right page. Some of them had parents that died, and they had no one to look after them. Some of them were just drug addicts and wanted to chase drugs. All of them, though, were looking for some sort of fulfillment for something empty inside of them. Literally, I disappeared off the face of the planet. Nobody knew where I was and nobody looked for me. Like, I mean, how would you feel if you disappeared tomorrow and no one cared? Law enforcement, in my experience, they criminalized me. Everything that was going on was my fault. It was my fault. It was my fault. And I'm like, at one point I had asked them, like, why do you not see me as a victim? Like, there's all these laws on the books to protect us from being trafficked. Yet I'm the one that's always in trouble. Like, I sit here and tell you guys everything I've been through, and next thing you know, I'm going to prison for something. Like, why is it always me? And I was told point blank by them that the laws are there for public deception, so the public feels like we're doing something about it, but they don't have the resources to actually enforce them. So it's easier to lock me up.
For me to tell you stats and what it looks like in Tulsa, I can tell you what it looks like, but I can't give you true stats because most of these crimes are underreported or misreported. Most of these children that are being trafficked look like delinquents. They look like they're thieves, they're stealing cars, doing drugs, running on the streets, running away, dropping out of school, when there's way more beneath the surface. It's like an invisible bondage, I say, to where you may think it looks like something, but it's so much deeper than that. And so in Oklahoma, what we see is there's a lot of traffickers, pimps that are luring children through love, but they're controlling them and keeping them in this sexual exploitation through drug addiction. So when they look like they're criminals, to me it's a criminal industry criminalizing victims to become criminals, but they're still victims.
Kids will turn to social media and it gives them a platform that we didn't have when I was growing up. It allows them to chat with people, talk to people, express their feelings, and that is the perfect opportunity for someone that has bad intentions to reach out to them and exploit them in those ways. I mean, I've seen kids that are very affluent, come from great neighborhoods, all the way down to low-income families that have one parent, but in everything in between. And it doesn't matter the financial background, the religious background, the cultural background, they can all be open to this type of activity. And that's why it's really important for parents to understand and not just hand them these devices without understanding the apps that are out there, the type of communication that's available through these technology.
I wouldn't say it was addicted to the lifestyle. It was more of where you're going to go. But if you run, where are you going to go? They take your ID from you. You usually get renamed. My name was Jessica for almost 10 years. My name's not Jessica. My name's Rebecca. We don't have anywhere to go. We have no money. We have no family to rely back on. You have no friends because you never stay in a city long enough to meet anybody, and you can't leave the room, so who are you really going to meet? You have no concept of time. Everything just kind of goes. It's like intellectual death. You can't question anything around you. So I would say probably the three biggest things that I've ran into was physical abuse. I've talked about this before, that I have more than 250 heel fractures in my ribs. And just in my ribs. That's not the only broken bones I've had. We never saw medical attention for anything, and we were expected to still make our money. It didn't matter if we had two black eyes, we put makeup on and went out. Drugs. Getting us addicted to something, because when you're addicted to something, you're going to keep chasing the money that pays for it. And when your pimp is the one providing it for you, you're more willing to do that. So drugs are a big thing. And then the feeling of dependency, the feeling of that's the only person you have to rely on, so you're going to do what they tell you, because where else, what are you going to do? They're going to take everything from you in the blink of an eye, and it happens all the time. They can buy and leave you somewhere in a random city where you know nobody. So, I mean, that's totally fearful to be in the middle of somewhere and not have anybody to call or rely on. So those are the three things I've seen personally that, I mean, I went across the United States and nobody cared. Our pimps would post an ad on a service like Backpage, which is no longer up, but City Vibe, Backpage, Redbook, there's probably 30 sites I can name off the top of my head. And they post an ad, and then we answer our phone calls. So like somebody will call and say, hey, I saw you online, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for an hour of time. How much does that cost? Well, my donation is blah, blah, blah. They come see you. The whole time we're in constant communication with our trafficker. They're either in the room or in a room next to us. Like typically we had 2 rooms, and we'd hang out in one and work out of the other one. So they were always with us, and we would go turn our date, turn around, hand him the money, and then we were expected to have another date within half an hour. And we did that until we had $1,500 every day. And then we'd go to sleep. So sometimes we didn't sleep for days. We were given, depending on the trafficker I was with, anywhere between $5 and $20 a day of what we made to buy money or buy food and condoms and cigarettes in my case because I smoke, but that's it. Everything else went to them.
A lot of times if your child is in trouble like that, they'll become very secretive with what they're doing online, and they'll get irritated if they can't get online. They might be doing some things that are a little sexually suggestive, putting racier pictures on their social media. But I'll tell you, the number one tactic that predators use online is secrecy. They don't want what's going on to be known to parents and friends, and so they will isolate and groom that child to be loyal to them and isolate them and to keep everything real secret. I have chatted with, last count was close to 600 online predators, and so I have been groomed and lured, and I've seen every tactic that there is, and the number one theme is secrecy.
The vulnerabilities come from not being watched or monitored online, for not knowing who kids are hanging out with at school. We're in such a time in the world where right is wrong and wrong is right. And our kids are seeing that they have a voice in being different, and sometimes even creating themselves different just to get attention. Those things make kids vulnerable. If they're just planted and they know their identity and they have self-respect and self-worth, I think they're less likely to become a victim.
I think the biggest thing for me is I felt like after everything I had been through that nobody cared. Nothing cared. It didn't matter if it was God or somebody else. I had lost my faith. And when I got here, I realized that my God in his crazy way put me through what I did so I could help somebody else today. And now that I see that, I've seen it's given me direction for my life. And I was really, really angry with God when I got here. I at one point begged him to kill me because I was like, you don't love me. If you love me, why am I still in this position? But today, I've come to realize that God puts us in places for a reason, and sometimes they hurt, and that's not his intentions. He doesn't want us to hurt, but sometimes it's so we can help somebody else. And I feel like today that's the direction my life is taking me, and my long-term goal is to open a transitional housing program to help girls like me. And my relationship with him is amazing today. I'm so glad I have a father that I can go to with anything and never get judged for it. So, it's great. I really, really love my relationship with God. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You couldn't take him away from me.
There's no profile either for a trafficker. A trafficker is gonna be a person that finds an opportunity to make money by treating another person as a product and selling them to a predator that has a pervasive idea of buying a child for sex. So who's going to be a trafficker? A trafficker could be anybody. It could be a parent, it could be an uncle, it could be a teacher, it could be a best friend, it could be the pimp on the street. It can be anybody that's going to take the opportunity of treating a person as a product and having financial gain from that product. The predator that buys the person for sex is anyone with a sexual perversion that almost prowls on the internet now. The internet would be the new street corner. So instead of a sexual predator looking for a child on the street or going to an adult bookstore or going to a strip club or wherever they might get their sexual fix, they can now go online and go on any chatting site, any Kik, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and start looking for people that they're interested in having sex with and start a conversation. They can even go on games that kids are playing online. They can get through the Xbox. Any app that has a chatting ability, a predator can be talking to your child. So a predator could be a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer. It could be a pastor, a counselor, a pediatrician. So, just recently, my husband was talking to somebody online as a 14-year-old little girl, because he's a cyber investigator. And in the middle of the day, when this teacher was supposed to be teaching class, he was chatting with a 14-year-old little girl. Well, what age is that teacher teaching? And what happens when the predator that's luring kids online wants to actually have a physical meet? Now that brings anyone, anywhere, vulnerable to that predator. So it's an epidemic. We do have an epidemic. And when pornography and child pornography is so rampant on the internet, we're almost creating a generation that's addicted to sexual perversion online. And if they get addicted to sexual perversion online, how are they going to have a normal sexual relationship? Because what you see online in pornography or child pornography is not what's going to be in reality. So there's an epidemic happening, and Jason and I and our team are very concerned, which is why we do what we do almost 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day, because we feel the feeling of a tsunami coming with so many children vulnerable to these predators.
The Demand Project had partnered with Homeland Security. Our main goal was to bring different groups together, from service providers to nonprofits to law enforcement, and get them basically all reset and refocused on what this problem looked like and how we could address it together in unity going forward in Oklahoma. And we had, over the 2 days, we found out we had over 500 people attend, and lots of fruit has already come from that. We got 5 new human trafficking victims that we're investigating. The Homeland Security agent that was part of the summit, his phone's been blowing up with groups that are wanting to get involved, and law enforcement that think they have cases. Many people have walked away from that very excited about what they knew and what it was. And we called it Beyond Awareness because we didn't want it to be another meeting where you heard a bunch of stuff and you didn't know what to do. So that's why we brought in all these nonprofits and other agencies to get in and so people could attend and get plugged into other groups. It wasn't just about the Demand Project, and it wasn't just about Homeland Security. It was about whoever you felt kind of drawn to, whatever focus you wanted to, fight in, as far as, whether it's victim side or the law enforcement side or through service providers. I mean, there was somebody there that you could connect with.
You can't force someone to get help that doesn't want it. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand, is a lot of these girls have been so manipulated and so scared and had that door slammed in their face so many times that they're not willing to take the risk of getting help because it's easier to stay stuck where they are. And it's sad that it's come to that, but that's how our society's let it come to, is the fact that we don't care. We don't care that it's going on. We don't care that there's a demand for you. We don't care that you're being sold down the corner from us, because people don't. They don't care. And this whole stereotype of tricks are these big, ugly, nasty old men. Not true. 90% of the tricks I saw were middle-aged business people. Looked just like me and you, walked in the door. So I think that's also a very scary part, is the fact that people have this premonition, or I don't know what you want to call it, that it can't happen to them. It happens to everybody. That these men are nasty old men. They're not. They're just average, everyday people that have a need, and we fulfill that in society. I think the biggest thing, especially for our generation, is we need to stop viewing women as property. There has been a huge shift as a woman is a sexual icon. We're not sexual icons, we're humans. And we deserve to be treated as one. We don't deserve to be treated as, oh, look at her. Or, oh, I can f*** her if I want to. Or, oh, I really just need to get my, we're humans. That's not okay. But in our society, we've been taught, one, not to say anything about anything, and two, women are icons. We're possessions. We're not human, and we are. So I think that's something else that really needs to change, is what is a woman? What is a woman? What is a woman to you? And people don't see our value anymore. And that's scary.
One thing that I want men and boys to understand is that girls aren't your sex toy, and they're not your sex object. You know, these are precious girls, and they need to be treated as such. We need to protect them, not exploit them. And don't be part of the problem. The guys need to be weary and watchful of what they put into their eyes and in their ears, what sites they're going to, what movies they're watching. They need to understand that that's an influence, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. They need to understand that what they watch influences them, and that girls are not meant to be exploited. They're treasures. And girls need to realize that their value doesn't come from likes and emojis and hashtags, okay? It comes from God. You're created beautifully, and you need to respect how God created you, and find the value in you and in how God sees you, versus if a boy likes you or how many likes you get on your Facebook page or on your Instagram post. It's not about that. It's way deeper than that.
I was a store manager at Subway right down the street from here, like right on 71st and Lewis, 81st and Lewis. And there was a kid there who, I was a store manager and he was one of my employees, and we got to talking one night about some stuff. And he actually had heard about the Demand Project through Victory. And at that point, like, I was at Dayspring, but I wasn't receiving the services I needed, but I didn't know who to ask because I'm not from here. I don't know the resources here. And he was like, hey, why don't you go to church with us on Wednesday night and I'll introduce you to these people. So I was like, what do I have to lose? So I went to church. And when I got there, the guy was like, okay, I know who you're talking about, but they're not here. So I was like, okay, I felt kind of defeated, but I was like, God didn't make me come to this church for no reason. You know what I mean? So the guy at the information desk gave my number to Jason, who gave the number to Kristen. But in the process of all that, somebody else who works at Victory was one of our regular customers who had told, I guess my coworker had told him about my story, who had Kristen's number. So he gave me Kristen's number. So I called Kristen, and Kristen called me and was like, hey, like, let's have an intake. Let's meet up. So I did. And at first I was like, what do these people want from me? Like, y'all can't possibly, who quits their job to help people like me? Like, I was in a city with millions of people, tourists from all over the place, and nobody ever cared for a really long time. So why would these people quit their jobs to help girls like me? And they are probably some of the first people, other than my best friend, that have ever showed me unconditional love. And that was an amazing thing. That was, like, it's still an amazing thing today. So they helped me get on my feet and helped me figure out who I was and what my identity was, and encouraged me no matter what I did. And today I get to help them, and I get to help them by helping other girls like me, which is an amazing thing. Like, it's fun to be able to go pick up a young lady from a hospital like I did on 2 weeks ago, and take her to safety and watch her grow. I got to take her to, she just got enrolled in school, like 17 years old, been trafficked. And I get firsthand to be able to walk through that with Kristen and Jason's help. So, like, I get to show somebody else what unconditional love means today. And I didn't know what that was. And I get to love someone else until they can figure out who they are. Because it's hard to figure out who you are. It really is. That's not an easy path to walk down, but it's worth it.
With the prevention part, we love the prevention tier, because the prevention part, if we could get children to prevent themselves from being victims, we wouldn't need to have this job. And I'm okay if I was to lose this job because there weren't any more kids being lured and forced or fraudulently lured or coerced into exploitation. I would be just fine. If we never had to do this again, we would be just fine. So we love the prevention side of it. We love to go into schools and into churches. We have the most amazing assembly called Empower with the Puppet House, and we tell kids what the problem is, what they can do to prevent themselves from becoming victims. Pretty much what we're talking about today, of who are these predators, who's selling them, who's buying them, and who's vulnerable to being a victim. And then we have this drama team that's from Red 12. It's a online school with a performing arts part to it. And so these kids that are at risk themselves come and demonstrate a trafficking scenario with kids being lured online and what happens. And it's a tragic ending. And then, so we love the prevention part, but we felt like we needed to be proactive. So that's where Jason's a cyber investigator, and we do legislation. And it doesn't really do any good to have great laws unless they're being activated. So that's why we built a legal team. The legal team is going to help any victim that has picked up charges, like for stealing a car or for stealing identities, stealing credit cards, running away from home, doing drugs, whatever it might be. If they've picked up charges while they were being exploited, our legal team wraps our law students around them to give them advice and to help them to fight those charges. But with the rescue restoration, I felt that I needed to become a private investigator to help law enforcement, probation, DHS, the community, to help find these vulnerable at-risk kids. So maybe a parent calls or emails me and says, I have a situation, my 15-year-old child was talking to somebody online or met somebody at school or whatever the scenario is, and they ran away and I can't find them, can you help? Well, we can go out and we could collect information and hand it over to law enforcement for them to find this child. What do we do once we find the child? Well, whether they go back home or they're in detention or wherever they are, our team, our restoration team called VAST, Victim Advocate Support Team, we meet them where they're at, which means we tailor a Wallace program around them. So we provide services, we facilitate services, mental, physical, spiritual, financial, and educational services around each victim that comes into our program in hopes of them becoming a survivor. I don't want to use the word victim. I want everybody that leaves the Demand Project, that comes in and graduates the program, to be a true survivor. What that looks like is completely up to them. What's a success? It's not what I think a success is, it's what each person thinks a success is. So we try to help them with mentors, a mentor, a spiritual mentor, a case manager, and a therapist for every single victim survivor that comes into the Demand Project. And we help them with all those things that we just told you about. We get them resources such as the basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, toiletries, and then we walk them through the process of getting them that therapist and mentor that they need. They're usually always insisting on church or some kind of a spiritual aspect of it, so we help them with that, with a spiritual mentor. We walk them through the trauma that they have by their licensed therapist working with them on that, and the mentor with day-to-day issues that come up. So we tailor it around every single survivor, whether they're 12 years old or 50 years old. Whatever needs they have, we try to help them with those needs. But we don't do it on our own. We're facilitating services throughout the community. So that's where the community comes in, because their services are needed, or we can't do what we do, because we don't have the houses, we don't have the programs. We need therapists, we need the community members to become the mentors. So we do a call out, and then people come into the organization, get trained up, and we put them to work.
So it's been rough, I mean, to say the least. When you go from running amok in the streets for 10 years to literally hitting a brick wall and having to sit down and look at yourself, it hurts. It hurts, and then it brings up a ton of emotions like, why did I do this? Why couldn't I see a way out before then? Why did these people not help me? Why did law enforcement turn their backs on me? And it makes you very bitter for a while. And I thought the world owed me something when I got here. I was angry at everybody. And then I had to come to a realization that it's not the world's problem. It's not everybody else's fault. I can't keep blaming everybody else, and nor is it my fault. So it's hard to put that in perspective with yourself, that it's not my fault, it's not the world's fault that this happened, but I have to move forward. So who do you blame? Because we're really good at blaming people. So today I don't blame anybody for it. I don't. I chalk it up as a life experience. What I do is help other girls. And with that, I find so much freedom. But in order for me to get to that point, I had to do a lot of intensive counseling, and I had to work through a lot of problems. I have an addiction. I have an addiction problem that I fight every day, and I have to proactively address that. So I do go to a 12-step program and address that. And I have a lot of PTSD problems because I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. And some of that, I still wake up to hear people scream sometimes in the middle of the night. So how do you address that, and where does it go? It doesn't really go anywhere. It just gets easier to deal with. So that's what I've learned from that. So after I let go of that bitterness, I was empty. And I couldn't figure out at that point, I'm like, now what do I do? Now I got this big, giant, gaping hole. I don't know how to love myself. I damn sure don't know how to love anybody else, because obviously that just doesn't work. So what do you do? What do you do to fill that hole? Well, I found God, and I found faith, and I found happiness. And with that, like, I got the motivation and found the motivation in myself that, like, I owe it to myself to be successful. I don't owe it to anybody else in this world to pick up the pieces except me. So that's what I do every day. I get up and I pick up the pieces, and I go to work and I go to school, and I work on myself as much as I can. And in the process, I get to help other people, which is a lot of fun. I get to watch other people grow, which is an experience that's beyond out of this world, to see somebody else come from where I came from to get to a place where I am today. Like, people don't do that. They don't see it. We don't have that. We don't have a chance. Nobody gives us a chance until I've never had the chance until I got to Oklahoma. And Kristen and Jason are the people that gave me that chance. The Man Project is who opened that door for me. And I've made mistakes. Please do not get it wrong. I am human, man. I make mistakes sometimes on a quite regular basis. But I've learned that, like, those mistakes are part of growing. And when I don't ask questions and I do something, then probably I should ask questions before I do it, because I don't know how to make life decisions sometimes. I don't know what's healthy for me. I don't know how to set boundaries, but that's all stuff that I can work on. So that's where it is today. Like, life is fun today. I get to get up and go to work and put a smile on and go learn something. And I got my driver's license, so I don't have to worry about going to jail for not having a license, which was, I failed my driving test 3 times. So I actually have my car, my best friend bought me the car. He promised me when I got here, after all that if I found a job and stayed at it and got there for 90 days, he would buy me a car. So I walked my happy self 3 miles to work and 3 miles back every day. And on the 90th day, he showed up with the car, but I didn't have a license. So I'm like, okay, like, thanks for the $10,000 car, but I need to learn how to drive. So that was an experience, but it's fun. I feel like I'm actually, like, moving forward in my life, so.